Peak Performance. I am super excited to have this amazing woman on the other side here today, Doc Allison Arnold. So today we came up with a snazzy, like what we wanted to talk about exactly. So today we're going to be talking about breaking free from not enoughness, helping young athletes build confidence, resilience, and joy. And so for those of you who don't know me, I am Brandi Smith. I am the founder of Perfect 10 Physical Therapy and Performance Training, as well as Perfect 10 PT Academy for online courses for coaches, parents, and athletes. So we all come to the table with the same education and the same knowledge base. So my little quick backstory for those of you that don't know me, I was a two-time collegiate gymnast. In my career of gymnastics, starting when I was 3, starting competing when I was 7, I had injuries, I had nutrition issues, I had a 3-year battle with fear, which Doc Allie, I am still going to keep saying every time, was one of the biggest proponents that actually helped me get through that fear and mental block. So Doc Allie and I, since I was 16, have been 16, have been buddies, but she just didn't know it for a long time. Later, fast forward a lot of years, I guess it was probably Allie, Max is 11, right? Yeah, he's 11 or 12.
He's 12.
Okay, so it was like 12 years ago, well, 13 years ago that we did our first presentation together in National Congress. Rehab Monkeys, you remember?
I do. I do remember.
And we were friends before that and as well, but we have worked together for a long time. And so throughout my experience, I have gathered a bunch of tools and I look at things. I'm a physical therapist, but I am a weirdo physical therapist. I am not in the box because I look at everything that's going on in front of me, the mind, the body, the spirit, the whole thing. And I work with athletes from recreational all the way up to Olympic level athletes. And we have a lot of programs to help support you guys. So that is a little bit about me. Doc Allie, she, my friend, has been around and helped so many people. So I'm going to let her do her introduction, but she's a mental toughness coach and she is the founder of Head Games World, and she has amazing programs as well. So I'm going to have Doc Allie introduce a little bit about her, and then we're going to jump into our amazing topic today. I'm going to continue to promote a few of you guys because a few more people slipped in. Again, sorry if you denied me, but I'm evidently persistent and also don't remember who I promoted. So come on in, Allie, give us an intro.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dr. Allison Arnold. People call me Doc Allie, and I think I know most of you in here. But for those of you that I don't know, a little background on me, I have always been a seeker. I've always been a searcher, and I've always been someone who's wanted to liberate people from whatever holds them back from being their greatest selves and having the most joy and the most aliveness on the planet. So I was a gymnast my whole life, and then I got into sports psychology or mental toughness. And for the last 30 years, I've worked with athletes all over the world and been super blessed to do that. And just continued this quest for my own enoughness, probably. And I've lived in a monastery in Nepal and Thailand, and I studied in the Amazon jungle, just all kinds of places. And I got a degree in neuroscience from MIT, just from all these places to try to fill maybe my own void, but also help other people. So today we're talking about a great topic, and it's this epidemic of not feeling enough. And I think that's true for our athletes, but I know, and Brandi and I are going to talk about this too, and I want to talk to you guys. That's true for me as a mom. That's true for me sometimes as a wife. That's true for me as a mental toughness coach. So it's epidemic. And I think there are ways that we can definitely work with ourselves and work with our athletes to make it much better.
I'm excited you said that because I joked, I would find something that just intrigued me that I thought like, man, that is like the coolest thing. I really want to get good at that. And then I'm going to do a fellowship because I went to PT school, I did my undergrad, my master's, and then I went through a residency and a fellowship. And so and then I did this other thing. anyways, if you look at the end of my name on the official title, it's like PT, FAOBT, OCS. And I was like ready to start this fellowship, ready to do another one. And I finally, at that point, I had to ask myself, why do I feel the need? Not the need
Right.
for speed, but the need for more acronyms. Like, what hole am I feeling with these acronyms, right? Like, and so I catch myself still. It's so easy as a, like you said, as a performance coach, as a physical therapist, as a mom for sure. Like, what this not enoughness creeps in some of the most subtle ways. And it's like, oh, I had great intentions to learn this thing. I'm like, yeah, I need to do a 2-3 year residency for that, right? Like, like I can't be okay with just doing a certification or getting good at it or like learning something, right? Um, anyway, so yeah, I struggle with it too. I think we all do. And I recently saw a post of a coach, Peterson Pierre. He does heated conversations. He has a podcast. If you guys haven't checked it out, he's amazing. Little plug for Peterson. Not anything from it. He's an amazing human who brings in some amazing souls. And so it's heated conversations. And he just posted a little video where he was like, he was at a meet and he's like, have you guys ever struggled as a coach with not enoughness? He's like, it's a daily struggle of like, am I giving them enough? Am I helping them succeed enough? Do I have enough tools in my tool belt as a coach to like be able to help them perform? Am I letting the parents down because I didn't do the thing? I'll put the podcast in the chat. It's called Heated Conversations. You can catch it on YouTube as well as he's on Instagram and Facebook. I'll put it in. Yeah, so yeah, I'm so excited for talking about this because it is epidemic in our society, and we are in a sport where there is actually not a perfect 10 anymore. I joked because my business is perfect 10, right? Like,
Right. Right.
but it's not about the not having a 10. It's this idea that things had to be perfect because things were never enough, right?
Well, yeah, and I'm curious about all of you that are in today. Like, how many of you feel like you're juggling 10 or 15 hats and trying to do them all well? And how many of you, and even like answer in the chat, how many of you feel like no matter how much you do, there's always this little voice that's saying, you could do more, or you needed to do more, or you didn't do enough. And so I'd love to just hear how many people kind of struggle with this whole thing. And I'm not surprised. And also just looking at the hats that you're wearing. And maybe you feel it more in certain hats or certain roles, because I feel like we're all juggling so many roles and we have like 10 hours or 20 hours in the week less than we really need to fill those roles. And so there's this inherent not enoughness. Mm.
Yeah, there's
I
a
was
lot of,
reading, I
yeah.
was reading what Courtney just wrote. Yes, and the challenge is my 8-year-old gymnast feels the same. At 8 years old, she's already feeling like she's not enough. Wow.
And this
Yeah.
is the thing, though. Like you just said, though, it's epidemic. It's almost contagious because we're like unconsciously in like feeding it unconsciously, feeding it in ourselves and others. So there's a lot of yeses, a lot of definitelys, and then we have
Yeah.
Lori, who's like constantly, she said, and it must be hereditary because my daughter's experiencing it too. So that this is what I'm saying. We're like unconsciously cycling this through. I was telling Allie, I was like, oh yeah, I still struggle with not enoughness. And I know exactly where it stemmed from. It stemmed from a sport where it was never enough. Like you were always striving for the next thing. Even when you did get a perfect 10, you went for upgrades next. Like there was always something else.
Right. And I think,
Michael's got one in there. Michael
oh, go
said,
on.
yes, learn to delegate to people like you.
We're here.
Yes.
So I do think, I mean, I do think that this has been around forever, obviously, but I do think it's more prevalent in the last, let's say, 20 years. And I want to talk about that, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think too. And I think today, more than some of our other presentations, we're wanting it to be a dialogue because we're all dealing with this issue. But I think there are some major contributors today to why we feel not enough. And the first one I want to talk about and just kind of throw it out there to you is comparison. And I think with the social media trap and kind of unrealistic expectations that we see in social media, there is so much comparison. And all you need to do is turn on your phone or look at your phone or look at your computer. And the not enoughness for me is just like glaring. It's everywhere. It's like, oh my gosh, these people took their kid on this amazing trip. Oh, we just went to camp at this like bad campground or something. And then the next thing is, oh, this person, is a sports psychologist and has such a big presence and is doing so much on social media. And I'm kind of lame with social media because I'm so old. I feel like I am not as good as some of these young people coming up. I mean, everything you look at starts to compare. And I love what Nicole just wrote. I'm still learning on how to manage the voice in my head. And it's an ongoing process of listening to that voice. And we're going to talk more about it today and managing it and seeing like, is that true? Or really looking at that comparison trap. So that's one thing that I think is very prevalent in terms of feeding this not enough voice, this not enough beast.
For sure. I like totally relate to that whole social media trap. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. I love some of the people that are doing amazing things, right? And we're even really good, but I still find myself going, "Oh my God, she went from this many followers to that many followers. I've only gone to this many followers. How am I supposed to reach all these people? How am I supposed to help all the people? I'm not enough. I'm letting all the things that I'm supposed to be doing, I'm not getting there, right? Like I'm not enough. It's not enough. It's never enough. Like it's crazy. It's so
Yeah.
the social media thing, like you turn that on and it is just so quick to like pull you in. And then, I mean, just going to school, the parenting thing, oh my gosh, you show up at school and you're like, this kid has that thing and that kid has this thing. And then your kid is also reminding you how these kids have this thing and that thing and she does not have that thing. And then oh, they're going on this trip, like where are we going? Like it's like we're home for spring break. But we are. They're in here playing. There's 3 kids here today. So yeah, so this one, Lori said 100% social media is a major impact. I try and remind myself anyone can put it out there and that their life is perfect. But how many are willing to be real about their life and how often is it not perfect? And then Nicole said, for me, it is watching my team get new skills. Yes, Nicole, like it's hard to watch our teammates get new things and be happy for them because they're like there's always, I don't know about you, Nicole, but for me, there's always this happiness that someone has achieved something. Like, oh, they achieved something. But then the little evil demon monkey monster on my shoulder starts going, but why haven't you? If they can do it, why can't you do it? If this person can put out this much media every single day, why can't you do it? If this person got the double back, why can't you do it? Like,
Yeah, and then just to top that, then I feel not enough about my own spiritual growth that I'm being that way. So I feel like not enough, like, oh, I'm not doing enough. And then I feel not enough that I'm feeling not enough. Does that
I'm
make sense?
I'm totally with you. I'm like, aren't I spiritually evolved past this at this point? Like, Brandi, how many hours of counseling and or mental toughness training and or journaling and or meditation? Like, my meditation practice. So it's like, can't I get over this crazy thinking in my head? I should know that you're just a record playing. Like, I know you're just a pattern in my head, but why am I still dealing with you? Yeah, so there's like not enoughness about my own healing.
Yeah. So, just to talk a little bit more before we go into how in the heck we're going to solve this and work with this, I just want to also mention that I think we also live in a very achievement oriented culture. And it's very hard to shift that from all the acknowledgement we see on social media, but also just in general about achievement. Like even when a baby's born, they roll over and we start clapping, like, oh, you did it, you rolled over. And they start to see, even as a little baby, that when I perform, I get love. And that's just very inherent in our society that when you perform, you get love. And I remember, I grew up in kind of this middle class Jewish home that was kind of trying to look like an upper class Jewish home, but we were a middle class Jewish home. And my parents, my whole life, and this is beautiful. I'm not saying it's not beautiful, but they were so proud of my achievements. When I would do something well in gymnastics or do something well even in my career later in life, they were so proud. And I think again, that's beautiful, but it's an epidemic where people connect outcome or performance to worth. Like if I don't win, if I don't place, if I don't get into this top school, then I'm not enough. And this is the second part of this kind of epidemic is really the fear of failure and the perfectionism
Mm.
that really feeds that not enough monster. And another thing is I think we have pressure to always be more. As I was thinking about like, why is this happening? There's this need to be more, do more, and to be better, push harder, and pushing harder is always better. So I think that if we look at social media, if we look at fear of failure and perfectionism, if we look at perform more, be more, that's three things that are really driving this not enough cycle.
You bring up this thing for me, Allie. When I was little, it was so just and it gradually happened. I think like I look back at that early childhood neural development because we know that nerves that fire together wire together, right? So we know that if in that little and we also know that babies between birth all the way up to like was it 3 years or 5 years? 5 years, 3 years, that if their nervous system kept developing at that level, would be huge Stay Puft Marshmallow Men because it's just making connections so fast. And so it is this interesting idea that at some point we got praised for all these little milestones that happen in infanthood, and my brain starts wiring and firing together. Praise equals, doing, action. I need to do. And, I mean, at one point, someone would have called me a hummingbird on crack. I have actually been called that before. Just being straight up honest. Allie, you knew me when I was a hummingbird on crack. I've slowed down, haven't I? Like
Yes.
it, but for real, because it was a do mentality that got me love, acceptance, value, and worth. And it was so interesting because it gradually evolved to my dad building a an awards thing that fit directly over the closet. And every award was categorized, the date, where it was. My mom was very meticulous. She was detail oriented. That's where I get my detailedness, which is good. It's not a bad thing. But, she wrote down all the things, the score, the place, everything. And then every award was put up there. And you know that at one point, my mom, so my house being a single child, right? Only child. It became a shrine when I left. Like that room became like just like it never changed really until they painted the walls and it came down. And at that point, my mom was in not the best of health to be able to put anything up, and so it laid in the closet until one day she said, "Hey, come get this stuff out of the closet. We need to put something in the closet." And all those medals, all those ribbons, all those trophies were in a set, in a garbage sack. And I asked myself, what am I going to do? At this point, I had been in meditation, had my own healing, right? What am I going to do with this stuff? And this is what blew my mind is that all that pressure, all that not enoughness that went into getting more and more and more and more of those awards, it ended up in a trash sack that sat in my garage for a couple years. And then finally, my daughter needed a medal to go with Simone Biles to school. And she went through the medals. And you know what she said? Mom, I want a gold medal. How come there aren't very many gold medals in here?
Oh no.
And so I
Oh no,
thought,
I'm so sorry.
okay. She was just like not understanding. Kids, they just say exactly what they think. She's like, why aren't there more gold medals in here? And I go, that's even more interesting, right? Like it was, there were a few gold medals, but there weren't a ton. And then I thought, what am I gonna do with these? So I donated them to a gym and I said, hey, give these to kids who stand in line, who have a good day, who just had a good attitude. I was like, not skill based, like not allowed to have like skill based. And so I don't know if that gym ever did give them out that way, but I thought this is actually a really healing process, is to have optional kids turn around and give their medals to the little guys in the gym for just being a good character, like showing up,
Yeah.
being dedicated, being desired. And because I just, that was a wake up call to me, how much not enoughness went into each one of those medals. And then in the end, they mattered nothing. No one asked me when I went to PT school or when I go to say, hi, Doc Allie, how are you? And Allie doesn't ask me like,
How many
hey,
gold medals you have?
how many gold medals do you have from when you were little, competing at 7 years old? Like, but they meant so much. And the
Hmm.
t-shirts that came with those, that was another thing, attachment to the t-shirts. Because of those, I had value in that. My not enoughness was underlying hanging onto the t-shirts and hanging onto I gave the blanket away from the t-shirt quilt to a homeless person. I said, this is actually someone that needs warm t-shirts. It's a good blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see Courtney's question in there, which is about, so what do we do? Kind of, so how do
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
explain to our young girls that are so focused on medals? And I want to talk about that. I think you guys know that I like to be a tool provider and make sure that you leave with concrete tools and usually a handout that Brandi will send out later.
So
So
yeah,
I
don't
do,
worry, guys. There'll be a follow-up email that'll come with the
yeah.
handout, the recording. If any of your teammates or classmates or whoever missed it, you can share it with your whole team.
But before I do that, I want to talk about a myth of enoughness and feeling enough. And this was a myth that I bought into for a long time. And that's why I want to talk about it. And it's the myth that when you feel like you're enough, that means you're settling. And I feel like this myth is one of the things that continues to drive the not enoughness cycle. That so many people think it's this or that. Like if I feel okay or enough about where I am, that means I'm not going to get better, or that means I'm not going to strive to get better. And so I want to talk about that. That is very far from the truth. It's about where that striving comes from. And it's not striving for the sake of needing to fill some kind of hole. It's striving because you desire to be better, or you desire to make more of a difference, or you come from a place of wholeness. And from that place of wholeness, not that place of needing to feed me, feed me, feed me, you want to push yourself to be better. So I want to tell you that as a parent, as a coach, this is really what we're striving for. We're striving for feeling enough and I'm going to repeat that again, feeling enough and still striving to be better. And that's the striving that lasts, because you're not striving from a place of desperation and fear. You're striving from a place of freedom and fullness. And I want you to really feel that. And it's almost like when you feel like you're enough, you can go all in to whatever you're doing, not from fear of failure, not because you have to prove something, but because you are already whole and now you can move on to what's possible. And this is such, before we go into the tools, I want you to know this and be able to teach this, because I feel like this is the sticking point that gets to so many of our athletes. If I feel okay, that means I'm settling for mediocrity. And that's not true. It's feeling okay with who you are and where you're at, and knowing that you can still strive to be better at the same time.
I
What do you
love that.
think about that?
That's quotable. Somebody needs to quote that. We need to put that somewhere. That's quotable. I mean, you know, when I get really real, Allie, like it has been the process of becoming of let me see. I want to phrase this because there's different layers to this. One I want to say is it's the process of becoming whole again. But then second layer to that is the realization that I've always been whole and I am whole from the whole get-go. It was almost a little bit of a delusion to think that there was something wrong in the first place. So, like that whole me acknowledging detailedness and perfection, I'm a perfectionist, grade A perfectionist. Like, I was upset that my blood type was A minus because I wanted to be A plus when I was in high school. Like, I'm silly. I'm for
I'm
real.
A plus.
Ah, Allie, I am not enough again. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's like the reality of recognizing that I'm whole as a perfectionist. I'm whole as a detailed oriented person. And but the delusion was that at one point part of my healing process for me was that um this idea that I thought like I even kind of got not enoughness in my healing process because and tried to control my healing process because I thought there was something wrong to be healed
Mm.
versus realizing that there was really nothing wrong. I've always been whole. My family was a wonderful family. The experience was wonderful. I had great coaches, right? But I had experiences in those processes that were not great. And
Mm-hmm.
those experiences left me thinking that I wasn't whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting once you have this realization that you are whole just as you are. One of my favorite cubs, so I do lions and cubs with athletes. Some of you guys know this, but my cub is the I am statements of what we want to create, right? We want to manifest and materialize. And my favorite one for those that have like a faith in God, and it only works if you have like a belief structure around it. So everyone has different beliefs. But my favorite one is I'm a child of God. And what that means to someone who has that relationship, they'll explain it. And I've had this as young as like 5 and 7 year olds tell me this. And I'll say, well, exactly what does that mean? Because I'm curious what they think it means. And they'll describe it as that they're perfect as the way they are, they're whole, they're safe, they're okay, they're protected, they're accepted, they're loved, like that word. And there are other religions and other practices that have other meanings, other words for that. But they're like someone else might say, I am divine, right? Or I am a creation of a higher being, right? Like, so there's different ways it be worded. But that realization is so deep. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I love this idea that you can be all things, that you can be both. Like when I think about athletes that I work with, it can still be true. Like you are amazing and we want to work on your bars. like like those two things can be true. It's not like my bars are bad, I suck. It's really looking at your athletes and being able and your children and being able to foster this sense like you're amazing, you're incredible, you are whatever, using you are statements. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment when we talk about identity, like building an identity of enoughness. But using those statements, and it's still okay that you want to improve your degree of difficulty. And that doesn't mean that you're a horrible gymnast. So I think fostering that, and I want to talk about 3 tools to really foster that in our children, in our athletes, and who knows, maybe even in ourselves, the way we're talking to ourselves with that inner voice.
Yeah. You know that I hear that all the time. A relationship to a performance outcome to the I suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So it's
it's
like connecting the performance outcome to identity. And we really want to move away from that. So
yeah,
can I talk about these 3 tools and can we kind of go into them a little bit?
let's do it.
So the first tool is using language and ask questions of your athletes, of your kids that facilitate self-esteem and self-confidence and a belief in themselves and who they are as people. So I think this is kind of the way you're phrasing things. And I think parents or coaches can ask things like, list 3 things that you did well today. What are 3 things that you did well today? Or focusing on what challenges, or asking an athlete, wow, you really pushed through your fear today. How did you do that? So you're asking a lot of questions that make them think inside their own minds. How did I overcome these challenges? What did I do well today? Even asking them, what did you feel good about that happened today? When you do that, you're helping them feel more masterful in their own lives. You're building a sense of self respect, a sense of self resilience, because they're having to think, okay, what did I do to conquer this fear? What did I do that was great today? And I think that really feeds their own self esteem, where they're not focused on my whole sense of self is dependent on outcome.
Can I add a little question to that?
For sure.
I love to ask the question, what did you learn about yourself? So
Mm,
like they may have failed at a meet in their outcome measures, right? Like they fell at the beam, they scored this thing, like whatever their outcome measures may have been not so good. But then I love to switch the thought process back to, but you got through that, right? So like what did, one might be what worked to bounce back? Like how did you build that resilience, right? Um, what was it that worked for you mentally or emotionally or even physically? Like maybe you had to go get a drink of water or whatever. Um, and then what did you learn about yourself? And sometimes it's like, oh, if I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, that's great. That's really important to know, right? Because then I'm less afraid to make a mistake. But I love to ask those questions like, what did you learn about yourself? And then also I like to ask them, like I'll ask them what worked. And then when they tell me like what worked, I'll say, what do you want to do more of?
mhm, mhm,
To get you there. And then we might say, like, is there anything you want to improve on? But like it's after they've already created this whole foundation of like, oh, this was actually a really good meet, like, or a really good
mhm,
training session.
mhm.
Um,
Courtney's asking, how do you respond when they simply say, I did terrible, even when they did so well? That breaks my heart. I'll answer that, and then Brandi, you can add to it.
yeah.
So I do believe that at first, when they're first kind of learning these tools, you have to allow them some time to vent. So I want to say that. Like, I think if you try to make the shift too soon, they'll push against the shift. So how do you respond to an athlete who's saying, or your child who's saying, I did terrible, I suck? So at first you want to be a mini therapist and you want to say, oh my gosh, and that feels so sad. You must feel really bad. You want to just say, uh-huh, uh-huh. Can you tell me, how are you feeling? What makes you feel that way? So you're just really helping them process. Then you'll notice that a door opens at some time. Like after they're done kind of a little bit of a vent, there becomes a door opening. Yes, I would say you need to validate the emotion before you're helping them create the shift. Because if you don't, they will always push against you, as you experience all the time. Like I experience that with my son all the time. Like if I don't validate his emotional state, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to get in a power struggle where I'm going to say, no, you did good. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. And then we're off and running. So yes, validate first and then wait for a feeling shift. And then you're going to ask a curiosity question like, is there anything that you felt good about? And they might still say no. And then you might ask, okay. And you might ask a how question like, how do we want to use this to move towards next meet?
Mhm.
So you're kind of changing them to a future orientation And you're starting to ask them what I call the three how questions, which are very similar to what Brandi just talked about. How can this make me better? How can this make me stronger? How can this help me learn about life? So, but I think, Courtney, you can't do it too soon because then you're in the power struggle. So you wait, and sometimes it's waiting like a full half hour, sometimes it's waiting until the evening. And then you make the shift. Like, you know what? We know in our family that every challenge makes us better because you want to have an identity of that in your family. And so now that you maybe have gotten a little more perspective on it, let's use it. How are we going to use it?
I love that. Like, for sure, I agree. You have to validate the emotions. And depending on how big of the event or the experience, like Olympic trials took many months to unpack. So, like, you kind of like, it depends on how big the event is. If we're talking about just workout, you give them 30 minutes and then you can kind of, but you do need to validate the emotion because if you don't validate the emotion, they're still reminiscing on the emotion. And I don't know about you guys, but like for me, there's a humanness that's like wants to be heard. So it's like if I don't feel like my emotions heard, then you can't really go to the next level of processing. And then I ask those very similar questions, Allie. That's the key is like getting them. And I like that process of processing an experience and finding the positives out of it. And then pulling that. So part of it is I call it unpacking. Like we need to unpack what happened, unpack an experience, and like pulling that into the now and then into the next. So it's like in the now, can I celebrate those successes? Can I somehow celebrate? Let's have a piece of chocolate. Let's give a high five or a booty bump. Like let's have some hot chocolate milk or like hot cocoa or let's listen to your favorite song. Like whatever it is that can give me a neurochemical hit that's gonna help us recognize that yeah, that's actually it was a rough practice. Yeah, this thing happened, but I learned this whole thing. Let's celebrate this that I learned. And then now, how can we pull that into tomorrow? Like, can we hook it to something? I like to hook things like, that whole neuro linguistics reprogramming, like some other stuff, just hook an experience to what we want to repeat. And so part of that might be hooking it with joy. Part of it may be hooking it with a word or even a color. Like, there's different ways to hook, but like helping them go into practice the next day with like, oh, my intention today is to experience learning how to be resilient. Like we start shifting our mind to an experience or a process versus how many fouclets did I make on the beam today? Right? How
Yeah.
about how many did I go for? How many did I feel confident on? Like I love those feeling type things. I love to do little circles with I've talked to several coaches, we've worked on the athletes doing it, circle them up at the beginning and say, what's our intention for today? And it's not outcome based. And so when they go outcome, like you pull them back and say, no, what can you control? Right? Can you control your emotions or your mind? Like, I'm going to feel confident on this. I'm going to make progress on this. So we make progression intentions or things that are mental and emotional, like, successes that they can measure in their own way. And at the end of practice, and maybe you have to remind them each event, like, hey, don't forget, what's your intention today? Like, what are you bringing in? What are you bringing to beam? Like maybe the energy you bring, right? Like maybe you're bringing something. And then at the end of the workout, circle back up again instead of the line. I don't like lines. I like circle up. So we circle them up, and then we can all go around and say, hey, how did you meet your intention, or did something else surprise you and happen today? Like, what was the surprise? Maybe you learned something about yourself you had no idea you were going to have to learn, you know?
Yeah. I want to say I love I don't mind the lineup, but I kind of like an opening lineup and a closing circle
Uh,
in terms of structure because I like the lineup in the beginning where we're all kind of stepping up and stepping into our practice and
yeah,
then
yeah.
maybe setting intention, like you said. And I love that idea about setting an intention that's not an outcome based intention, but it's more of a progress based intention. and then closing with a closing circle where everyone says one thing that they did great at the practice or whatever. Veronica asked if this is more what I just said, if it pertains more to parents than coaches. And I think it does. I think parents have the luxury of time where coaches are going to work a little bit faster. So, just to talk about that in terms of coaches, if you have an athlete who's negatively spiraling, I think one of the first things that you're going to do is to really foster a growth mindset. And I know that's such a buzzword, and people are like, oh, boring growth mindset. But to teach your athletes right away that it's just they haven't gotten it yet, and that it's more about effort than outcome, that you're really pleased with their effort, and that every setback is a stepping stone to be better. So I think when you have an athlete that's in a not enough spiral and you can totally see that I suck mentality, you want to help them reframe it by saying, you know what, girl, or you know what, guy, you just haven't done it yet. I can see that you're making progress and every day is making you better. Then I do think doing a state changing activity will help them, again, change the neurochemicals, something that Brandi was just talking about, so that they can change that state faster. And what I mean by that is maybe you switch and say, let's do 3 more drills on that. So they do 3 more drills. They feel successful on those drills. They're releasing more serotonin, more dopamine instead of like cortisol and too much adrenaline. You're really playing with their mental state. So I would say as a coach, you want to do a reframe and then a reshift. You're reframing the not enough spiral and then shifting them to some kind of success, which is going to change their brain. I do think she meant pertain. So yes, yes. So the first thing, just to kind of get this, because we're kind of bleeding into all 3, and I want to help you see that there are 3 things that you can use. So the first thing is language and questions that build self-esteem and help them be more introspective about how they've overcome obstacles and how they've been successful. The next thing that we've already kind of touched on is focusing on effort and character more than achievement. And I call that finding the hidden wins in everything that your athlete or child does. And what I mean by that is it's so easy to praise achievement. And like I said earlier, we live in that culture of achievement. Like we remember who wins the gold medal, and it's hard to remember the bronze and the silver. That's how we live. But hidden wins are about character and effort. So when you're a parent, you're going to be excited, like, oh, you won floor. That's so awesome. And then you want to add a character or a process-based comment like, but you know what I'm really proud of? I'm really proud of how hard you worked this season on floor. Oh my gosh, you are such a hard worker. And then add that you are statement to create identity. So when you say you are to your not enough athlete or not enough child, they internalize that as an I am statement. And I am is so powerful in terms of both how they identify themselves as an athlete and as a person. So if you are proud about an achievement, like I'm as a coach, I'm so proud that you again, that you won, you got first all around at state, but then being able to say you are such a role model in the gym with your attitude, with your work ethic. So you're really building those URs. And then the athlete internalizes that as I am a role model. I am mentally tough. So that's the second one. Really be conscious of getting out of too much achievement focus, which is, I mean, even in my household, we are like, oh, you got 100 on your test, or you got an A in your class. But we have to add that for Max, but on our wall of pride, there's not only good grades, because we have a wall of pride where we hang things. But there's also things that he put tons of effort into that maybe didn't end up being 100. And then just to say the third point in kind of using tools to build a sense of enoughness and self-esteem is this growth mindset and really focusing on using setbacks as setups for comebacks or setups as fuel and being sure they know that it's all a process and that maybe they just haven't done it yet. And I want to be sure that we're clear on those three tools because I think when you use those tools, you're going to be planting these seeds that grow a feeling of I'm okay, I'm enough, and I know that I'll get to my goals if I keep working hard.
Do you want to go ahead and just repeat all three of them back, like straight back to back, so they have it all clear?
Yeah. Use language and ask questions that facilitate self esteem and like self discovery. Focus on effort and character over outcome and achievement. And foster a growth mindset, which is knowing that they just haven't gotten their results yet. And that, again, all setbacks are stepping stones to make you better. I'm reading what Lori wrote, focusing on the you are statements, not to be performance based rather than attitude, team like sportsmanship. Yes, those hidden wins are focused on optimism, positivity, effort, work ethic, resilience, leadership, compassion towards self and others. Those are the character traits that we really want to build. And I think of achievement comments as candy, that it leaves your child or your athlete just needing more, like, oh, I need to do better. I need to do more because I got a 9.5 this time and I got a piece of achievement candy. Now I need to get a 9.6 or else I'm not enough. But when you praise character, when you do the URs that are about those things that I just listed, it's more like fuel and good food for the soul. And it's more like a steak dinner that will keep feeding them all throughout their lives. Because that I am statement, like, let's say it's like, you were so mentally tough today, which is like, I am so mentally tough. And that translates for an entire lifetime. And that's really what you want. Through these statements, you're planting seeds that will last an entire lifetime, not just giving the candy and the sweet sugar of achievement that will always make that person feeling like they're not enough and they need to do more to get your love or to get your acknowledgement.
One of the things that I love to praise is resilience, either mental or emotional resilience, because every day there's an obstacle. Like it doesn't matter if it's at practice or if it's at a meet, but there are some obstacles. And I love to say, like, you are so resilient. Look at these obstacles you've overcome, because once they realize that they overcome little obstacles and then a bigger obstacle happens, they go, wait, but I've overcome these little ones. Maybe I can do this too. And then when they have a big obstacle that they overcome, then all of a sudden their self-confidence, self-efficacy, like their self-esteem, it rises so great that they're ready to rise to the occasion. Like, because they've experienced and they've kind of like, I cut like a piggy bank. They banked the idea that they are resilient and that they can overcome obstacles. So, stuff happens, equipment fails, grips rip in the middle of meets or whatever. And they're like, oh, I can overcome this because they have this experience of like they're an overcomer, right? Like it's like, so I loved using like you're an overcomer, you're resilient, you're like just like I'm so proud of how you just never gave up, right? Like you're persistent, right? I love being persistent because life just that is life. There was a question.
Yeah, I think these two questions that overlap, I think these are really important.
Yeah.
like Shylon's question and Courtney's question, how do you explain this to young children who are so focused and on like the outcome and comparison, and they're always looking outside of themselves to see, what did she get, what did he get, what do they have, and so how do you help with that? I think that's a super super important question. Do you want me to start with it, Brandi, or do you want to start with it?
Either way, I mean, I guess I'll go with it. So one of the things that I like to bring them back to is just this idea that everything outside of us is not within our control. Like I'll be like, do you have control over what Sally ate, what Sally slept, whether she was sick recently? Do you have control over her genetics or her effort or anything that's going on? And the answer is always no. And I go, well, where do you have control? Well, I have control over my own container. Like I have my own bubble. And in that container, I'm in control of my mind and my emotions and the effort I put in, showing up each day, how I fuel my body, how I drink, how I sleep. And just kind of feeling back into like their own space and kind of explain them like, you know, everyone has their own journey and we're kind of all up the journey up the mountain together. Like we're going up on this adventure together. But we all have kind of our own path to the adventure. And so your adventure is going to take you on some different adventures along the way, some different stories that Sally may not go down, right? And in the end, you may have different set of tools from going on your adventure because you figured out how to make a fire with some sticks and you figured out how to cook this or do that. And in short, like in gymnastics, you figured out how to, get over an injury and you had an injury and your friend did not, right? Or figure out how to center yourself because your nervous system is more wired a little excited all the time and you have to center yourself more. And Sally's nervous system may be different, right? And so in the end, we're all going to get up to the mountain, but we might all have a different backpack. And everything we go along the way, every obstacle, every task, whether what is it? We're going on a bear hunt. Do you know the book, Allie? I used to love so I don't know, for those of you with little guys, we're going on a bear hunt and it's this book about like going with the family on a bear hunt and they're having to go through the woods and through the marshes and over the hill and around the thing and then she's complaining like I got beat up and I got this thing and it's a little children's book but it's a great book to talk about the process like especially with little guys going on a bear hunt. That's how it goes. I'm going on a bear hunt and blah, 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 blah. I can't remember all the words right now. I'm sorry, guys. But you go through the woods, you go through the darkness. So it's talking about getting through fear, going through hard obstacles. You're trying to journey together. You get separated a couple times and then you have to find again. And then in the end, they find the bear in the cave and they realize this big nose is there and they all go, ah! And they go running back home and the bear comes knocking on their door. And so it's kind of this idea of getting on a journey and getting to the end and not recognizing what you're going to get. Like you don't really know what's coming, even though you think you're going to find a bear, but really it's just a hunt. But then in the end, you do find the bear and you realize that maybe that bear is not what I wanted to find and everybody goes home. And so it's just it's a cool story about the journey and the process for little ones. You probably could use it up to like I mean, definitely 6 or 7, but then even at 8 and 9, you could use it and then turn around and use the metaphor, like actually teach them. So yeah, that's one aspect. Go ahead, Doc Allie. I know you've got some burning stuff to go in there.
I think that's great. I don't have much to add to that. I would say acknowledge their feelings.
Yeah.
Number one, that it's hard because it's hard. We're talking about it still today. It's hard. Redirect them to what's in their control. I love what you're doing, Brandi. This is perfect. And I would call this and honor their unique gift and their unique path.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that you said it perfectly. I don't have anything to add to that because I also know that we're tight on time. So I want to say a couple more things.
Yeah.
Um, you know, part of this with, we're talking about athletes or we're talking about kids, and part of it is us modeling because we talked about the contagion or the hereditary nature of not enoughness. So I don't want to go without talking about us modeling it for our kids and our athletes. And I think it's okay to model our own not enoughness, like our own insecurities, so that they can acknowledge their own insecurities and then also model our own resilience or our own struggle with taking what's in our control and talking about what's in our control and then honoring our path. So I think that is super important to be able to say, you know what? Sometimes I feel this too. And when I feel this too, what I do is this. When I feel this too, what I do is look at ways that I can use it as fuel to make me better and to help me give my gift in a bigger way. And to know that I'm on my unique path. I know that I'm enough just the way I am, and that it's okay to still want to give more. Um,
I think
so
that's how we
that's
started,
important.
right? Like, I think that's how we started. If you think about how you and I work, that's what we started with the very beginning was you and I saying, I got not enoughness,
Yeah,
right?
right. I got it. I got it.
I got
Yes,
it.
we modeled it for you guys.
Yeah. But I think what I love about that aspect of modeling it, one, we know on the cognitive behavior and the motor learning side of things is that, and there's a whole Montessori approach behind all this too about modeling. But people have taken this concept of modeling into different realms, Montessori being one of them. But like, we know that that's how we learn. And one of the biggest, I don't want to use the word evils, but one of the biggest hiccups, like however you want to call it, obstacles, is isolation. So
Mm,
when we stay in our not enoughness alone, we stay in isolation. But when we raise our hand as a coach or as a parent or as a performance coach or whatever, and we say, yeah, I got a not enoughness. Yep, so do I. This is how it is, and this is how it presents, like in my life. Or we just relate and share stories. So there's a lot of, I like using stories because um, parable stories, like our brains like that, likes imagery. That's how we like, it's easily learned from that way. So, I think that modeling and talking about it, opening up about it to the parts that are, you don't have to share your whole story with everyone, right? You can have very private boundaries. That's not a big deal. That's a good thing to have boundaries. But being able to share your not enoughness helps bring out yourself out of isolation, but also brings out the athlete out of isolation. Because some of the not enoughness, if you guys think back of when you first started having the not enoughness monkey in your head, like that, you didn't realize it came in. And at some point, many times we think it's just part of us. Like it's normal. The monkey's driving the bus. And so we think that it's normal. But until we start to talk about, like, oh, I have this feeling. And it's like, oh, it is normal to have it, but it's not something you have to live with or has to drive the bus. You can acknowledge the insecurity or the hard part and then turn around and use it as fuel, right? Or use it as something to build your character from.
definitely. Definitely. So can I just summarize for a second?
Yes, we're going to wrap it up anyway. So yeah, summarize is
All
good.
right. So I'm going to put something in the chat that I really like to summarize this. And what it is I guess to summarize this whole topic, I want people to know that enoughness doesn't mean playing small. Enoughness means going all in because you're already whole. And I feel like these three things, when athletes feel like they're enough, they don't hold back. When parents like coach or when parents act from an environment of enoughness, they create an environment of growth, not pressure. Because I feel like when we parent from our own not enoughness, you create more pressure than growth. And I feel like when coaches lead from not enoughness, they inspire greatness. And I feel like those are three things to really think about in terms of not enough and enoughness.
I absolutely love that. That's like the best summary. Like that's the best way to summarize this. So beautiful.
I think that parent one is so crucial because I even noticed that with my own parenting. When I parent from a place of enoughness, I really inspire growth, not pressure. And when I parent from a place of my own inadequacies, I parent from pressure. And just in terms of the parents out there, I really,
Ah,
I feel that.
I feel that too. Yeah, that's definitely, yeah, I can totally relate. Totally relate.
So I know we're at time and I want to be
We are.
respectful of their time.
We
So,
are on time. Well,
mhm.
so that wraps it up with the not enoughness. Hopefully, we can help you guys and help you help your athletes break through the not enoughness. And first thing is just acknowledging that it exists. That's the first step. And then Allie gave some great tools. And Allie, as always, I absolutely love I don't know, bantering, talking, discussing. I always feel like we should
Hanging.
hanging. Allie and I love to just hang and chat. So we rarely get to do so.
Yeah.
Actually, this is probably close to kind of a conversation.
Yeah, as close as we get. Can
Yeah.
I do wanna
Yeah, drop.
tell you my new thing that's out.
I was
And
just about to ask for what new thing you have.
yes,
Don't you have an app
I
that,
have an app
oh,
and I'm
I'm
so
so excited.
excited. Yeah, I have a new app. I just put the link in the chat, and it's
Let's,
called the
for those that are folks that are listening on YouTube live, it's athletewarrior.passion.io. That's where you
Yes, yes,
can get
yes.
Allie's app for those that are listening live on YouTube. Okay, go on.
Yeah, and this app has 8 pillars that teaches an athlete how to be mentally tough for sport and for life. And there's 8 pillars of the athlete warrior, and there's videos, there's audios to listen to, there's quests to go on. So I'm super excited about this app. And any gym that's willing to send like a letter about the app out to their parents, I have a special prize for. So if you're a gym and you're willing to kind of support the app and send it out to your parents' organization, definitely email me at docallie@headgamesworld.com and I'll send you the letter to send to your parents, and also tell you about my special prize you get. So I'm super excited about this app, and I'm super excited that athletes can be on their phones, which are on anyway, and continue to train their mind. So
I love it. I'm super excited for you, Doc Allie. It's going to be
thank
a
you.
great app. Like I just know
Thank
it.
you.
I know it's going to be great. Allie and I have worked. I've sat in so many of her lectures. We've worked together. So if you guys are new to Doc Allie, you should definitely check out her app. 100%. And she also runs some camps and some other things. So there will be more of those information. I'm sure. Is it at headgamesworld.com if they want to see?
Yes, headgamesworld.com for all of my online individual sessions, group sessions, camps, and the app.
Yeah. Awesome, 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 awesome. Well, for those of you who came, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Go and break some not enoughness. Check out Doc Allie's app. And I'm so glad you guys came today. And for those of you that have not checked out my free training, I'll drop it in for you. Perfect 10 PT Academy.com. So check it out. For all those who are on the webinar, you get your free training. So perfect10ptacademy.com. Everyone, thank you guys so much
Thanks,
for coming.
everyone.
I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Brandi.
you guys. And thank you, Allie, as always, one of my faves, people to hang out with. And coming up next, we are going to have an open Q&A next week with me. So for those of you who want to get any of your questions answered, be it mental, be it emotional, be it physical, be it whatever you want to do to kind of refresh, finalize, refine the last stuff before states and before regionals. I have open Q&A. So you guys are going to drive the bus next week. So come on in and ask all your questions and we'll give them all answered. Can we use the app individually for our clients?
I'd rather you not do that as a coach. I'd rather you um, empower your clients to purchase the app, especially since it's just $14.95. So I'd rather you not like use it for your whole gym. If you can not do that, that'd be
I
awesome.
think I think it's better to have your own app because you got to go on your own journeys and she's got these adventures built into there. So I really think that, each kid should get their own app and their own stuff.
Yeah.
So they can track themselves. How they can track themselves. Other people are
There's
going to.
trackers.
You got to track it. It helps. You got to get the neurochemical hits from the app, like the good ones, right? So, all right, you guys, thank you guys so much. For those of you who want to jump in next week, free Q&A will be open. And again, Doc Allie, as always, I love you so much and
Thank you,
have an
Brandi.
amazing rest of your Wednesday.